Hello, hello. I am back, and it's been a while. I'm sorry, everyone. Yeah, it's Halloween, so I have a guest. Do you want to say hi?
Hi, I'm Cassie. I'm Josh's girlfriend.
This is Cassie. She's my girlfriend. So, Eric's not here right now. It's just me and Cassie. We made,
Sorry, Eric.
we made, we made a Halloween movie list. So it's 22 movies. We gotten through two of them, and we're just gonna kind of document as we go along, kind of talk. So I picked 10 movies, Cassie picked 10 movies, and then we just had a couple that we mutually wanted to watch. So would you like to introduce us to our first film, Cassie?
Sure. So the first one that we picked, we've been doing like a random number generator. So the first one that we picked, was a Takashi Miike short, that he did for Masters of Horror, which is an anthology TV show. It was directed in 2006. And that's about all the synopsis that I can give on it for right now.
All right, that was good. Good job.
Thanks.
Okay, so if you're not familiar, Miike is a Japanese film director. And he does a lot of it's just like from what I've gathered, it's like a lot of like sort of like extremely violent horror films that are like I don't know. I'm not really familiar with this stuff. I know he did like Audition and Visitor Q and some of those movies.
Each of the Killer was probably one of his most popular ones, but a lot of them are extremely graphic torture scenes.
Which is like my least favorite thing. So
and one of my favorite things.
Yeah, you love people getting tortured. So this is her pick. Basically, like she said, it was it was just like a 1 hour episode of Masters of Horror. So it followed a character returning to Japan to pick up a prostitute he had like fallen in love with, and he had promised that like he would bring her back to America. And so it's him kind of like trying to basically find out like where she is and like
what happened to her.
Yeah. And so along the way he ends up like at this like brothel and is talking to this girl who's like, yeah, she was here not that long ago, but she killed herself. And that's pretty much what happens. Like that's pretty much the setup. Is that's mostly like the first quarter of the movie is just kind of that whole thing.
Right, but at this point, though, something else important to note is that the prostitute that he winds up talking to also has a deformed face, which comes into play later on.
Yeah. And so, do you want to get into like spoilers at any point, or do you want to just kind of make it?
I mean, why not put a warning in it?
Yeah, I guess I'll see. I'm not technologically savvy, or I can't use the word technologically either.
If you don't want spoilers, don't listen to the rest.
Yeah, I'll timestamp it or something.
Yeah.
But you get sort of snippets of what happened. It kind of cuts back into and forth between like timelines.
Yeah.
Where you'll be like, it'll be him talking to this prostitute, and then her telling the story, but she's not reliable. You can tell she's kind of like a what's like a compulsive liar, basically. And so she keeps kind of like telling half truths, and she's like, well, that's not really what happened. She says something. She's like, well, that's not really what happened. And at the end, you end up finding out that she had the other prostitute framed for like stealing from the lady in charge of the brothel, and which ended up with the girl being tortured, and then the girl ended up killing the one who had been tortured. It's kind of just this whole like mess of these characters at this brothel and stuff. But
it is a hot mess. It's a hot mess.
I guess what were your overall thoughts?
I enjoyed it. You can tell that Miike's style is extremely prevalent. You can see, what he likes to do, and it's kind of like showcasing exactly how he likes to do it, especially with the torture scene. Extremely uncomfortable for something that was this put on TV?
Okay, so I looked this up. It was never put on TV because it was considered too extreme.
Okay.
And that was after he had cut it down, because I guess the show had been like, you can't put this out there. And he's like, okay, like we'll fix it up.
Right.
So then he actually, like, the one we saw was like the toned down version, which I was very uncomfortable. I don't like torture, like any sort of like torture scenes or anything. I don't like. I can deal with like anything else, but like I don't like seeing that.
I'm not sure necessarily why I enjoy it personally. I think it's just like kind of looking for the next kind of extreme thing. But this compared to things that you'd see in like Ichi the Killer, for example, that's one I'm going to keep drawing back to because it's one I've seen most recently. A lot of the stuff that you see in that is definitely more extreme than what happened in this, I guess, short film.
Yeah.
We can call it. Extremely disappointed that it was not in Japanese.
Yeah, that was one thing you said immediately. You were like, "Oh, it's gonna be have subtitles and stuff," and then it was not. It was just like people kind of speaking like
It was unintelligible English.
it was kind of hard to, even if they should have at least done like English subtitles. I think would have probably helped.
I think that they should have just bit the bullet, even had the English or the American character in speaking in English. That's fine, but I still would like even the girl that's telling him the story about what happened to the prostitute that he was in love with, even her to be bilingual and having these flashbacks be in Japanese, because I think that having unintelligible English spoken by clearly Japanese actors is worse than just having English subtitles.
Yeah,
I don't understand why they wouldn't let him do that.
It was. Well, I guess part of it too was though that this is based on a like either a book or a short story, so I don't know what the source material was
Right.
like. For me, like, I guess, would you say you enjoyed it?
I enjoyed it.
That sounded very hesitant.
The only thing, like the not being able to speak Japanese thing really threw it off for me.
Yeah.
Like it really put a dent in what my opinion was of this.
Yeah, I guess that was not something I really paid, like, I understand what you're saying. I didn't pay that much attention to that. I was more kind of trying to, like, keep up with, like the storytelling and kind of trying to figure out, like, these torture elements, like, why am I subjecting myself to this? But, go ahead, what were you going to say?
I guess the thing with his directing style, though, you have this type of movie that's definitely, like, Japanese horror and Korean horror both have a very specific style.
Yeah.
And when you're dealing with that kind of style and it's not in its native language, that really throws it off for me. Like, I don't know why, but it does.
Counterpoint.
No.
Counterpoint. I feel like you could also make the argument, though, that the fact that he did do this, like, in English and stuff probably introduced some people to his, like, other films. I think, and this came out in 2005.
2006.
Okay, whatever. Same thing. So 2005 or 2006, I think, which obviously that was before, like, I think that was, like, early days of IMDb and stuff, so it was, like, that's one where it probably was not as easy to be like, oh, Google search best horror films, or, like...
Right.
And that was right after Saw, too, so people were just, I think, kind of getting introduced to torture porn. I think that was 2003, I could be wrong.
Right.
So I guess it's just... I understand what you're saying. I'm not disagreeing, but I think you can make the argument that, like, in some ways it worked better than had it just been, like, a foreign film that was put on a TV show that... Because the thing is, like, it wasn't what he wanted to do exactly. Like, there were clearly budget limitations. The actors were not great. Mainly the main guy who spoke just English, he was not good.
Right.
He was quite bad, actually. But... you can tell, like, there's probably a lot of compromises that he made, and so I think that it just kind of falls in line with all the things. It's like I'm sure the source material is good, but, like, this is not a great version of it.
But at the same time, though, this is not the first episode in the Masters of Horror thing.
Yeah.
So the people that were watching this clearly were like, I'm into what this is, and once they hit that, if it was in a different language, maybe that would have been something that would have been like, this is something extremely different. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Maybe it's just me being stubborn, but that's my opinion.
I will say, though, from what I've sort of gathered from the show is, like, it looks cheap.
Oh yeah.
And they're very simple stories for the most part. And so I guess I'd kind of have to see it in that context. I might either be like, these things don't bother me as much, or
right.
Because I know, like, Dario Argento did one of the episodes that I actually have seen, and it's been too long for me to remember, like, if there is some sort of, like, barrier there, I guess. Not necessarily a language barrier, but maybe just, like, a cultural barrier, because, like, he obviously did all the, giallo stuff.
Right.
That was sort of, like, that weird sort of culmination of, like, languages and, like, actors and things that didn't really fit together, kind of making them work.
Right.
And so I guess kind of going back to what you were saying, I do kind of wonder, like, if I were to go back and watch that and see, like, oh, his fit in really well, and then Miike's didn't fit in at all, I wonder if that would kind of change my perception a little bit. But in any case, I guess, like I said, the budget clearly was a problem. The acting clearly was a problem.
The time restraint.
The timers, that could have easily been 2.5 hours, I feel like.
100%.
It, like, there were so many elements that didn't really end up getting explored that much. Go ahead. Looks like you're going to say something.
I'm sorry to backtrack. I will say the English is not all that bad.
It kind of depends on the character, too.
Shitty acting, but great dialogue.
Yes, I would agree with that. I think whatever the source material is, I'm going to have to kind of look more into this, but I'm sure whatever it was probably... It seems like it would have been like a really kind of tight short story, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just kind of shitting on this movie, or I guess I'll call it a movie. I feel like I'm shitting on this, but like I really had a good time watching this.
Yeah, it was fun.
Torture scene aside...
I enjoyed it. I thought it was done very well.
I agree.
I can't say it was tastefully done, because none of his stuff is tastefully done. It's very in your face, shoving it down your throat, but I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Or in your mouth.
Or in your mouth. Or in your fingernails.
Yeah, which... Also, that kind of bothered me that, like, the cover for this is just, like, the climax of the episode. I feel like that was kind of a dead giveaway, you know? Like... I don't know.
Yeah, but you would never have expected to actually watch someone take needles slowly out of their shirt and
like,
put them
what do
in
you
someone's
expect
fingernails.
when you see that like poster though? Like, I don't really know what you're...
I don't know. I mean, like, sometimes you have these like torture, quote unquote torture scenes that could easily be like in your face and it doesn't cut away and you're forced to sit there and look at it, but you don't, you know, the camera will cut away or it'll pan to, you know, her, if it would have panned to her face or, you know, whatever, pan to, clearly she's in pain. No, like, you're forced to sit there and watch it.
I will say one thing about the torture scene I appreciated, which I think if it were up to him, it would probably just, you've seen everything. I felt like the cuts were done really, like, timed out really well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they were done to a point, though, that you knew what was going on, but, like, at the same time, it was, like...
And even for the budgetary restrictions, like, those scenes looked really convincing.
Yeah, extremely believable. I'm sure that's where a lot of the budget went.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, but when
the sets look good, too, I thought.
The sets look good. There's not very many of them.
No, I guess more of the budgetary restrictions were, like, cinematography and, like, probably actors and... Ugh. Just things like that were just kind of like, eh. But yeah, this one like really caught me off guard because I'm not familiar with his work, and like I said, I don't really like sort of torture scenes and stuff. But I really enjoyed this, and for as kind of shaky as some spots were, I thought it ended like really well, kind of tying in that like the way it escalated. You kind of had that payoff of like the unreliable narrator, and sort of like.
A resolution.
Yeah, sort of like, but it's almost like you get several resolutions.
Right.
One thing that I don't know if this was because of the way it was cut or if it was the original story or something. I felt like there were things that were introduced that were meant to be the focus that based on like the dialogue and stuff, it kind of seemed like peripheral.
Well, right, like you and I right now are focusing. We've talked about the torture scene the majority of this time, when in reality that was only
25 seconds of the...
Yeah, so
yeah.
I mean, the rest of the movie, though, like, it talks about, you know, family drama, and it's, you know, the romantic side of it, and I mean...
It's sort of just, like, poverty and just all these different elements that, like, are...
Incest.
Yeah, incest,
and domestic abuse and like and marital problems and there's a lot that it focuses on, and I think like you said it could have easily been 2.5 hours long. And I wouldn't have complained,
but I guess there were things where like so there's a particular part where the girl, I can't remember the girl's name, but she says that like, oh, the woman you're looking for killed herself, and he's like, no, it can't be, or something like that. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, it's just him being, like, in denial. But that was meant to be sort of, like, a jumping off point for, like, a different subplot. And I kind of had to think, do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. I kind of had to think back and be like, how did we get to this point? And I'm like, oh, that line of dialogue was supposed to be sort of like a springboard. You know what I mean? Right. And so things like that happened, like, 4 or 5 times where I'm like, how did we get here? And then you'd kind of be like, oh, that's why he said that thing. but it wasn't like either emphasized correctly or they didn't draw it out enough to make it like a main focus.
He did such a good job with what he had to work with, though.
I agree.
I mean, even in the beginning, you have really good foreshadowing with the lady in the river and
a lot of really there's like a lot of really eerie like foreshadowing that was done, and it worked like on several levels, both on like sort of setting the stage and then sort of tying it into the story and then kind of tying it into the backstory and then kind of tying it into where the story was going to go. Like, just there were a bunch of layers that Miike put in that I like. Again, I don't know if this is based on the source material or if this is just kind of his flair, but little things like that I thought made it like I think it was a little bit too tight. Like I said, I think it could have been easily double its length, but just little things like that I thought really added like a lot of depth really quickly.
I mean, but like we said, though, I mean, if it could be,
Yeah.
But
So,
given that it was, his hour, he made one hell of a use out of that hour.
No, I totally agree. Would you, like, I guess, what are your, like, any final thoughts you have? Any rating you want to give, or any
I
recommendations,
definitely
similar things?
The
floor is yours.
So this was after Saw, correct?
Yes.
I definitely find I drew a lot of comparisons, especially with the end of this movie, to stuff that James Wan has done.
Namely Malignant.
Even though, like, I don't know, because Miike did stuff obviously before this, so I don't know if Wan was drawing inspiration from Miike, or the other way around. Either way, I think that Wan's earlier work definitely is reminiscent of something that Miike would have done. So I'm not sure if they were kind of bouncing off of each other with that kind of thing. That's a huge, huge speculation. Definitely didn't do any kind of research on that, but definitely drawing comparisons. I definitely recommend other Miike work, 100%, even if Josh doesn't like it. I do.
Again, this is the only experience I've had with him. I just, like, generally speaking, not really big into, like, torture, so.
If you're looking...
Unless I'm inflicting it, then it's cool.
Yeah, okay. If you're looking for something shocking with, good storytelling, I'm huge into Japanese and Korean horror, so I would totally recommend other stuff that he's done.
Probably before this, I would imagine, too.
Before this, after this, everything.
Just like, absorb all of it, I guess.
Absorb all of it, yeah. Just take in the media. It's really good. Really good. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars.
I wasn't quite so friendly. I gave it a 7 out of 10. I guess the consensus here is, like a 3 out of 5 or a 7 out of 10. We both liked it a lot, but we tended to focus, I guess, on things more of the things that we wish would have happened than, like, the actual material, which is not a great sign, but like we said, it was done so well, like it's kind of hard not to appreciate and enjoy to some degree.
Right.
Anything else you want to add?
No, I think I'm good with that. I'm satisfied.
All right, so if everything goes to plan, we'll have 21 of these videos coming out. 21 others.
Yeah, 21 others. Sorry.
Coming out in the next month or so. So happy Halloween, everyone.
Woo-hoo.
Go watch movies.